Why not?
Because I don't like the idea that I'm not. Because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control.
I know exactly what you mean.
I know exactly what you mean. So I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, you gotta say like the pink noise check test. Got to say like if you got three-way speakers, typically, check the bass mid with pink noise going from one speaker to the next to the next. You're listening for a consistent, the same more or less tonal characteristic. Then you check the mid-range. By that, you got to mute, disconnect the bass mid. So you only listen to the mid-range drivers and then go through that. Do they sound the same? They got to be measured with a microphone, Neo. You have to put the microphones close to the speakers, so when you go from one to the next, they should be more or less the same. You test that with pink noise first, of course, and then mute the mid-range or disconnect them on a passive crossover. Go to the tweeter and check that. They have to have the same, and the same with the mid-range. Same with the low range. That sort of thing. Or they gotta have the same tone. Once that's been established, Neo, then you can put in the speakers in their position. Then you got to check them again, Neo, because they're behind the screen. Now the screen is taking a different characteristic on those frequencies. It's not hard to achieve, Neo. And then you just do the same procedure all over again until that's checked. Run frequency sweep if you want to. Do the frequency sweep individually on the bass, the mid-range and the high range. So you got to disconnect the speakers, and then so you don't get any, anomalies, things, check everything through. And then when it looks the same, or if it's not, then you make the adjustment until it then looks and sounds the same. You ain't gonna nail, you ain't gonna get every single little teeny little frequency there that's spot on, not unless you had an equalizer that can go through every single frequency band. When you go from 1 kilohertz and then it starts going like this, if it's not too loud, Neo, that's a bit calm, that's good. So you go then from a frequency 1 kilohertz and go below it, you got all these digits of frequencies. All this matters, Neo. And then you go up to 1 kilohertz. It gets complicated, Neo. Look at those frequencies, Neo. Every single one of those matters to the matrix. What ideally is that you got to get the tone, the frequency sweep within a few degrees. You can make minor adjustments by putting parametric filters in, bandpass filters, and then so you look at it, evaluate, and you think, I could put a filter here, widen the cube bandwidth out a little bit, and then just lower it down slightly until you can get an overlay with the other frequencies. When you measure it electronically through an amplifier, Neo, it looks like this. Frequency tones and that sort of curve. So with the overlay, that's the 5 screen channels overlaid. That's going from system output from the REW. I had to do a few. This procedure took a while to do because I'm not using the multi-channel stereo mode like I was on the Denon, where it was a lot easier. I could use REW going through that. I could go through any channel at my discretion, very quick, very fast. And now it's changed a little bit, so I've got to figure out how to probably get use this as a multi zone sort of thing by putting in the sweeps or such. But I'll figure it out. I know I can still use the REM, but yeah, it's a bit complicated because I could use two REMs. I could put a forward phase or positive phase, and then I could put a negative phase, and the negative phase will go to my blow surround, going for a matrix decodering. One like that there. There's 3 more in the kitchen rack. Anyway, so system output was going from the Storm down to the DCX, and then on from the DCX over to the THX sound system, onto the amplifiers, onto the JBLs. And that frequency response there is only processor mode, only the processor mode. There's also what's called the amplifier return, so the signal on that would be a little bit the opposite. So I like to have a little bit of nice low end in here, so it feels like a cinema, but only in a small room, without it maybe being too overpowering. It's still powerful, okay, but not overpowering, because the whole system can go up to about, oh gosh, quite a way. The speakers, they're all in the room. They would cater for a average small medium, like 400 seat cinema. So that's just processor. The other one would be complete opposite, and I don't think I want to show you that. But more or less, you should be getting a nice, on the amplifier. You get the similar thing with the amplifier. That's only going through processor. Amplifier would also show something more or less similar. And so when you get to a loudspeakers, the frequency response is all over the place. It's all up and down, all over the place. It's all wiggly, and you got to then think, I wonder if this these several tweeters, one of them may possibly be faulty, because it's got a very unusual dip in the frequency response, and the test to be done. Anyway, it's not a big deal. Once you know the basics, it's not a big deal. You don't have to make a big deal out of this sort of thing, So if you know someone that's got some 4673s as well, you didn't exactly say how many, 2 or 3 of them. I'm assuming maybe a few. But yes, with the filtering, whether you use, depending on what filter you use, etc., doesn't really matter, because if you were to do frequency overlays comparison, say you go one for a Trinnov, you go one for a DCX, and then you compare that, and then you're supposed to ideally get those frequency overlays the same, so you might have to do some level adjusting until you just get it overlaying, and then you just listen to it and you think, you know what? It still sounds the same. More things change, the more they stay and remain the same. The 1990s, yeah. Well, it's a little bit different or something today, I think. I think there's some standards and maybe changed. Maybe cinema, they call it the Cinema Association or something. And there's probably maybe... Independent Standards Organisation or something like that. It probably has some changes now, since the 90s, obviously. But yes, I know what you mean. I kind of like the sound of how things were back then, particularly with THX, compared to 2000s, THX 2000s. Something that was, I don't know, based with one cinema, Empire Leicester Square. It was just too damn loud in mid and high range. It was just too toppy. Not enough 15 bass mids. Well, actually they had 18s, but with the original they had about 20 15 bass drivers for the screen channels. So that's 4 for the left, 4 for the left center, 4 for the center, 4 for the right center, 4 for the right channel. And the bass, well, wow, the low end, the depth, wow, it's like they were saying. Their system, their THX system at the Empire went lower than an actual film soundtrack is capable of going down to. So their system was pretty damn good, and it's a pity it doesn't exist anymore, because it'd be still way better to anything that's around today. All this Atmos is at a local cinema is just top end. It's just deafening. I'm not kidding, I've got to wear earplugs. It's just too damn loud. If I made my system that way, I'd be turning it down, but I wouldn't, because I'd be carefully listening to the frequency range, and then you got the high range. You got to make sure you got an elevation so you can hear those high frequencies. Otherwise, they'll just sound like completely down there, and they'll sound very faint. If you had listening to the other high frequencies, you got to make sure you got a slope or such. Otherwise, if you was just playing flat frequency response and then thinking to struggle to hear, or maybe 16,000 kilohertz, and it's barely noticeable, and then you go down to 8 kilohertz and it's like bam, and you're like reaching to turn the volume down suddenly, or put your fingers in your ears, because the frequency is so we pick up on it so easy. And the same would be go down to 4 kilohertz or such, and 1 kilohertz. Films are not entirely mixed like I think what nature is. Nature can't be fooled. Psychoacoustics, sometimes you can get some things that are decent. I've heard a few decent ones, and I've heard some very loud, where probably maybe I would turn on the audio limiters, either on there, or turn the audio limiters on here, or I could use the dynamic audio range compressor on some of these offendingly loud movies. I think Mad Max Road Rage Fury, or whatever it is, that's one of those movies that's extremely deafening. But it's still got bass, it's still got a hell of a lot. It'd still be way better here if I would have listened to it all, than maybe at downtown. I'll be reaching for my earplugs. So that's that. That's only a little bit. This whole thing is very complicated to explain, but it is so simple. I have to sit down. I can't really do videos like this and then you listen to it and then think, I'm not sure what he was talking about there, or But I would only have to listen to your system to know if the pink noise or the tone is out of place with the screen channel. I only have to listen, and then I'll start going through the bass channels, and then go through the HF horns. In my case, it's the HF horns. I like to get them so they're as spot on as possible as I can get them to be. If I thought that something's out of place, then I think the compression, the diaphragm that attach onto the face plug, the diaphragm, has come misaligned again. I've got to take the screen down, get behind it, take the speaker down, put it on a bench, and that takes me several hours to go through the tuning to get it all spot on again. And to be a little bit more clinical with that sort of thing, I may have to take them all down, and that can take nearly a day's work, so it's not easy.